Exercise. It makes you happier, healthier, stronger, able to live out your final years on this earth with dignity and freedom. Exercise is just such a wholesome and helpful thing. Yet there are some people who think that encouraging exercise or even talking about it is toxic. And one of these people was just hired as a public health consultant. This is Virgie Tovar. You may have already heard that the city of San Francisco brought her on a few months ago as a consultant for the public health department. The problem? Well, as we'll see in this video, Virgie is not a very big fan of health. And recently she's taken this to a new extreme. Recently, Virgie's been hating on exercise. Guys, I've been really trying not to talk about body positivity anymore. I made my points. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. The ideas put forth by the body positivity and health at every size movements are silly. They don't make any sense. They're just not logical.
The best way to win the war against fat is to give up the fight.
But the public health department thing caught my eye and made me wonder, what's Virgie up to lately? So I go check out her Instagram and I see she has a problem with exercise now. So I'm like, fine, we're making the video. So I guess today we're catching up with Virgie's fresh takes on exercise, health, and weight loss. And childhood obesity. Virgie was actually recently on Dr. Phil, and that's a large amount of what they discussed.
Does anybody disagree that we stop childhood obesity? Do you disagree with that?
I mean, I just think that it's a very big phrase. Right? Like, at the end of the day, right, body diversity is a real thing. There are naturally bigger people. There are naturally smaller people.
So yeah. But first up, a very brief overview of her new job. You may already know who Virgie is, you may not. But Virgie Tovar is a prominent, quote-unquote, fat activist who recently accepted a new job. The San Francisco Department of Health's new weight czar has gone viral for her proclamation that no one has to be healthy.
What is your definition of health?
No one has to be healthy. No, right?
She's been hired to be a voice in the room reminding officials about stigmas faced by overweight people while they are developing public health initiatives. Virgie has a lot of very extreme views about health and weight, so I was so surprised when I saw this hire. And for me, I feel very, very strongly that I owe myself health and I owe everyone that I love health. I think I have a duty to everyone in my life to try to be behaviorally healthy. Like, I can't help if I get a disease, but I can at least try to live in a way that doesn't cause everyone else around me anxiety. That's the way I think about it. And that doesn't mean you have to like run marathons, but I think that trying a bit is your moral duty to a degree. And I don't know if everyone has to agree with that philosophy, but it probably should be your philosophy if you have a role in public health. Like, if your job is literally to increase the health of the public, you should have a basic interest in health. Because if you don't care about health, that's cool. You have the right to go set up a casino and cigar stand over there, but you probably shouldn't take a role in public health. I feel like that is extremely fair. But it says her job is to remind officials about stigmas faced by overweight people while they are developing public health initiatives. Now, at first glance, I see nothing wrong with hiring someone to be like, hey, don't worry about your weight, just focus on engaging in healthy behavior. That's a very helpful message. That could be the message that some people need to hear in order to do what they need to do to be healthy. Get your sleep, eat well, be active, try to make progress, and just do what you can from where you're at. If that was the message that Virgie was hired to promote, I see that as a positive thing, even if I don't agree with the rest of her ideas. But when I looked into it, Virgie's opinion actually seems to be the opposite of that. And nowhere is that more clear than her ideas surrounding exercise. So let's go take a look at her Instagram. Let's start first with this Instagram post. Virgie recently conducted a weight bias training to a group of government workers. And this training included the following 4 tips. Ending weight/food bias at work. Helping to decrease stigma around food and bodies at work means doing less of these 4 things. Number 1, talk less or not at all about how you or others eat at work. Okay, this is already a pretty big ask of your coworkers, I think. Obviously, by this, Virgie really means don't talk about your diet. Do not talk about keto, paleo, carnivore, veganism, calorie counting, protein consumption, sugar reduction, or any other way that suggests that you are moderating what you consume, which is a major double standard because let's be real here. What would Virgie's opinion be if Nancy from accounting brought cake to the office?
It's so rich.
You know that talking about that office cake would be completely fine and perhaps encouraged. Well, unless someone asked for the smaller slice.
CRFI. Inevitably, there's always someone at the party who has to declare publicly that their slice is too large.
Like, there's no way that Virgie is talking about outlawing talking about food in general, because she spends half of her Instagram talking about what she's eating. So obviously anyone would be allowed to talk about worshiping junk food at the office, but no one would be allowed to talk about trying to improve their blood sugar levels. It's just a little bit backwards. It's a little bit over the top. And it's genuinely concerning that this was part of a presentation given to a government organization. Okay, next tip. Number 2, talk less or not at all about your or others' bodies at work. Okay, that's fine. Number 3, talk less or not at all about exercise at work. So this is why I wanted to make this video. Every single person should be annoyed about this. There just ain't no way you're telling people not to talk about exercise at work. First off, that's like saying you can't talk about the weather if the weather made your health better in every single way. Exercise is just so unproblematic. It is literally one of the most health promoting behaviors of all time. Depending on who you ask, sleep might be number 1, but exercise is right up there with it. Regardless of body weight, if you exercise a few times a week, really exercise, even if you don't lose a pound of fat, you will be a way healthier human being. Weight loss is hard and not everyone will achieve it, but if everyone just committed to exercise, it would be an absolute game changer health-wise. And if someone is being hired to represent overweight people in the room and not pushing this message, it's just silly. A health expert discouraging discussion of exercise should not exist. But wait, maybe I have it wrong. Maybe Virgie is encouraging people to exercise. She recently held a Reclaiming Movement After Diet Culture workshop. My heart is so full after hosting the Reclaiming Movement After Diet Culture workshop today. Fat phobia, diet culture, and toxic fitness culture try to convince us that there is a line between legitimate exercise and illegitimate movement. Everything else we do all the time, like laugh, breathe, cry, hug our pals, run to get the last slice of pizza, make tea, bend over to give our fur children a pet, have sex, exist, etc., etc. Okay, well, there is a line. There's a distinction between running to get the last slice of pizza and exercising. But I think what's even more concerning is not only do these things not qualify as exercise, they don't even really qualify as movement. This is a whole workshop that, in theory, would be just encouraging people to do what they can. Like, lower the bar a bit, but be active in your own way. Do something from where you're at. But with Virgie, we can see that she lowered the bar from exercise to just movement, but then didn't even meet that bar. Let's go through this, okay? Laughing. I mean, you can call it movement. I mean, it's not really voluntary though, so it's kind of on the line. Breathing. Definitely does not count as movement. Crying. I mean, there's been times I would call it movement, I guess. Hugging our pals. I'm not gonna qualify that one as movement. You're stationary, most of that. Running to get the last slice of pizza. Ironically, this is the most movement that is on this list. Making tea. Again, you are stationary throughout the entire thing, doesn't count. Bending over to give our fur children a pet. It scares me that Virgie's experience with day-to-day movement is so limited that bending over qualifies to her as movement. Have sex? Okay, sure, fine. Exist? Virgie, there is a clear line between exercising and existing, okay? I feel like the fact that exist is on this list. Considering that a lot of the time we are existing, it looks like this, and this, and this, I am gonna go ahead and declare that existing is not movement. If you added up the steps from this daily movement, you'd be at like 50 steps. You really would think that the entire point of a workshop like this would be like, you know what, no matter where you're at, you can do something. Go for a walk, go outside and play with your kids, your pets, keep your house really clean, pick up a sport with your friends. Years ago on the channel, I covered a story of a really inspiring person named Jesse Shand. He was like 600 pounds, he could barely stand up, and to get started exercising, he literally just flopped around.
Miskers said that at your weight, you could just literally flop around and lose weight. I laughed, I had to admit, but let's try that theory.
And that honestly was not only movement, that was exercise. It got his heart rate up, he was sweating, it was exercise, and it changed his life. If we always just do what we can today and do a little bit better tomorrow, we'll find ourselves one day in a better place in life. And so you'd think that would really be the purpose of her being hired. Here are some clips from longevity doctor and author Peter Attia on the value of adding just a little bit of exercise to your life.
What's the difference in all-cause mortality if I go from doing zero exercise to doing just a bit?
Going from zero activity to just 90 minutes a week is about a 15% reduction in all-cause mortality.
So I'm 15% less likely to die.
And if you go from being completely sedentary to just doing 90 minutes a week.
You start looking at the health benefits of, purposeful but not really brisk walking. They're substantial. Walking the dog, the data on gardening. So the health benefits of light physical activity, light exercise, are substantial.
Going from completely sedentary to just doing some movement, not existing or running for pizza type movement, real movement, changes your health radically for the better. So you'd think that the point of a reclaiming movement workshop would be to promote this message, but instead, Virgie's message was literally this. What if, instead of trying for more movement each day, we just change the definition of movement? Some of Virgie's finest work, well worth whatever the taxpayers of San Francisco are paying her, I'm sure. Although I did see that the position was worth only like $12,000, so it's not anything crazy. But given the premises of the workshop, it's probably 12,000 too many. Virgie actually breaks it down further, and it honestly just gets worse. The premises of the workshop were, number one, we are all born movers. The universe is always moving, and so are we. She's literally saying that we're already moving because the planet is rotating, isn't she? That's what that says, right? I'm not just... The universe is always moving. That's what that says. See, what do we actually do with this? The workshop is persuading people that exercise is unnecessary because the planet is rotating. This is why I don't want to talk about this stuff anymore. It's too out there for me. I just don't. But it actually blows my mind when I see university after university has invited Virgie to come and speak. She's given multiple speeches at Berkeley, a well-respected American university. And it actually kind of messes with your head a bit. You're like, am I missing something here? Or is what this person's saying actually not making any sense? Exercise is the rendering of movement into productivity and outcome. Usually that outcome is modification and disciplining of the body, a way of claiming the body as your responsibility rather than the responsibility of the collective. Exercise is a construction that is designed to generate blame, and that is why it can feel so loaded, so awful, even though it's just 1 foot here, 1 foot there, 1 arm here and 1 arm there. I don't know where to start. There's so much wrong with it. This is the perspective of someone who seriously couldn't possibly imagine exercising for any other reason than hating the way that your body looks. But Virgie, you have a heart and it is a muscle. You have a brain. I think thus far in society, exercise has had terrible PR. I think something we do a terrible job of in society is bringing home the message that exercise is not just a weight loss thing. It's barely a weight loss thing. It's a life thing. We all need to do it whether we like it or not every single day. In Peter Attia's Outlive, he says we'll actually have to train in order to do the following basic activities when we're like 70 or 80. Go for a nature hike through a hilly area. Pick up a grandchild. Carry in your own groceries. Lift a suitcase into an overhead compartment on an airplane. Open a jar. Have sex. Climb stairs without assistance. Isn't that insane? We won't be able to do any of that basic stuff if we don't train for it. In other words, at the time when most people get to retire, they will have zero quality of life if they don't train for it. And if you're very overweight or obese, which is Virgie's audience, it's who she's been hired to represent, you're actually going to need to exercise even more to account for this. And I know a lot of people aren't motivated by who they'll be when they're older. But if you also just want to be your best self in general, like today, exercise is inseparable from this. If you want to have your best brain today, you need to exercise today. I was actually reading this other book, Spark, about the benefits of exercise. There's a school in America that has these students exercising first thing in the morning, but it's one of their classes, and they're doing really hard exercise. And they're finding that the kids that are taking this class first thing in the morning are crushing the rest of the day. I'll do a video on this book in the future. It's actually wild. And it's really the same with healthy eating too, though. If you want to have your best day today, not to mention when you're old, you got to eat healthy today. Mood, energy, memory, learning, just general quickness and zippiness of your brain, that is all governed by movement and food and other stuff, but those are important. So yeah, Virgie, f*** off. Like, if you have a problem with the entire concept of exercise, it's fair to not like it, okay? But if you hate it this much, you have to do some inner work, and you probably should not hold a position in public health of any kind. Like, hating on exercise because of your experience with diet culture is like hating on vegetables. Oh yeah, that's right. Virgie and her friends did a whole skit hating on vegetables too.
Die, kale, die! You vegetables! Die, veggie scum! Look at what we can do when we work together to vanquish patriarchy! I mean vegetables.
Not only that, but Virgie has had some really terrible takes on childhood obesity recently too. And I can't show you too much of their conversation because Dr. Phil is notorious for copyright striking, but I'm gonna take the risk for Virgie's views on childhood obesity. Dr. Phil had Virgie Tovar on his show along with this like fit, pro-health medical doctor. And at some point he blatantly asks Virgie if she disagrees with the idea that we should end childhood obesity.
Does anybody disagree that if we can stop childhood obesity from a health standpoint, that we should? Does anybody disagree with that? Do you disagree with that?
What do you think Virgie says to that? Well, she basically just flat out refuses to answer the question, just kind of stutters.
I just think that it's a very big phrase. Right? Like, at the end of the day, right, long-term dieting sets people up to gain weight over time.
Nobody said anything about dieting.
So Dr. Phil straight up asks her, if you could push a magic button and end childhood obesity, knowing all the health and life problems that it causes, would you do it?
If you can push a button and keep a child from experiencing obesity, that's not what I asked you.
That's her response. She's not going to put an end to childhood obesity because childhood obesity is the result of body diversity. Childhood obesity is natural.
That seemed to me like a question that anybody would say yes to. If you could stop childhood cancer, would you say yes to that?
Well, I think what's hard is we're using the word obesity when there's actually body diversity, right? Like, there are people in this room who have children who are naturally in larger bodies.
Ma'am, you're really not gonna put an end to childhood obesity. So yes, Virgie would not put an end to childhood obesity. Even though she went through it herself and had a rough time, she would not put an end to it.
Body diversity is a real thing.
To suggest that childhood obesity happens because of the body diversity thing, it's just not rooted in reality. Like, it's so silly that I would not be talking about this seriously if San Francisco didn't hire her and Berkeley didn't invite her to speak. Like, somebody has to say something. Like, obviously, we're not all genetically the same. We have different reasons for being different body sizes. But body diversity to the tune of children being morbidly obese didn't exist in the 1970s. This number has steadily risen for the last 60 years, up from basically zero. And at some point, Dr. Phil completely calls her out and says, "You just want to run an agenda about discrimination and ignore health."
You're wanting to run an agenda about discrimination and ignore health.
But no, I don't want to health. I don't want to ignore health at all. I'm saying that
you do want to ignore health because you want to run a social agenda.
And finally, if we need any other evidence that Virgie probably shouldn't hold any sort of role in public health, even if it's only for $12,000, I present you this article. So I found this article on her old blog where she discusses interrupting an obesity research conference. Her and her friends ran into a meeting of researchers and scientists discussing improving the obesity epidemic and interrupted the whole thing by playing music and yelling, "Correlation isn't causation." And then Virgie was escorted out by a woman who said "shame on you" to her, to which Virgie thought, "If shame belongs anywhere," I thought, "it belongs to the people who are at this conference, not us." You mean the scientists trying to help people with obesity? Virgie's thinking is so obviously flawed that at some point on the show, even a 14-year-old clapped back at her.
Not the same thing. Race and the size of your body are just not the same thing.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video about a person who quite literally disowns the entire idea of health being hired to a public health position. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.